First of all, you should know that there are those who argue that an attempt is being made to divide the world into three economic, military, and cultural empires: the United States, China, and Russia. Thus, leaving aside the European countries that for hundreds of years were protagonists of history. Each of these empires will have allies until they become part of the new order they intend. But can you imagine that the most powerful country on the planet is about to lose everything? 3 prophecies announce an imminent collapse and assure that Donald Trump will be the last to govern it. Today I will show you amazing data and ancient predictions that could change your view of the future. If you stay, you will discover how immigration policy, the economy, and artificial intelligence are triggering the end of American supremacy. Prepare to question what you believe to be true. I am the Duke Mentalist, and this is the end of the American dream. Prophecy about the fall of the United States. First prophecy: never stay in a country where you see skinny dogs. This is how the report of a group of seers called the Inflammables begins. Their leaders are descendants of women who were attempted to be burned at the stake during the Inquisition, but the fire could not touch them. And, according to their visions, this is how the events would unfold. By the year 2026, the labor crisis in the United States will be felt not due to a lack of work, but due to the increasing demand in key sectors for labor that was previously covered by immigration and that the country's citizens do not want to take. Mexicans, Colombians, Peruvians, Argentinians, and Venezuelans, etc., expelled by the Donald Trump administration, form different organizations in their nations that seek to raise awareness about the reality of the false American dream. Under the slogan, "Don't go," they will recount the hardships lived in a country where their leader does not want them there and makes it known. By 2027, the discontent of millions will explode. In those key positions, immigrant workers used to collect their salary and rest a bit without presenting any problem. But the Americans are asking for more and more income to cover them. Companies are facing a deep bottleneck, and the government makes the worst possible decision to continue blaming immigration, leading to differentiated payments. The descendants of immigrants and naturalized citizens will earn less for their work, and that percentage will go directly to employees who are pure Americans. In other words, they will charge much more for the same task at the expense of the misery of others. So, by the middle of 2027, the exodus will begin. Insulted, impoverished, and belittled, immigrants will leave the United States. With the support of organizations created by deportees from previous years, the slogan, "Don't go," begins to change, and the governments of the mentioned countries take matters into their own hands, developing the plan, the return home. Millions sell their properties and assets in the United States to leave, but the Donald Trump administration will not allow them to take the money they legitimately generated. Even so, they leave anyway. And for the first time, Americans realize that all the country's power is faltering. That only the withdrawal of all descendants of original Mexicans triggers total collapse. But Mexico would not be alone in this. Latin Americans from all nations are leaving en masse. Russia and China are far from having those problems. Their citizens and those seeking employment there are willing to work hard. And the weakness of the United States can be smelled miles away, like a shark that tastes blood. So the Russians and the Chinese look at each other, nod their heads, and go after their poverty. Alliances begin between these powers and South and Central America. Huge cities are erected for 2028 as cosmopolitan capitals of the New World. places where nationality, language, or homeland doesn't matter. As long as you favor the growth of trade and industry of the host country with your work. In its relationship with the empires of China and Russia, cutting once and for all the dependence on the United States. A world that was originally designed to be divided into three will be only of two. The weapons, none. All it took was a little respect and nothing more than that. A shot is heard in the White House, overwhelmed by internal crises and the destruction of his nation's future. A leader dies. Latin Americans prosper while in the shadows of what was once the United States. The economic crisis is so brutal that only furious protests are seen on the streets, and the sad gaze of those millions of skinny dogs whose owners, submerged in depression, can no longer feed. Second prophecy, Donald Trump's tariffs. Who the hell turned off the light? The modern world runs on electricity, and in case you didn't know, minerals like gold, copper, and others are vital for every device we use daily. Based on this, a super secret group of conspiracy nerds who call themselves the Knights of the Apocalypse study what they call the blackout clock. A forecast to establish how many years it will take for major cities to run out of energy. And surprise! The American tariff policy just put the United States at the top of the list. Why? Why? Because he left these essential minerals for energy production without tariffs. And that screams to the four winds the need and desperation that North America has for them. The weakness can be smelled miles away, and the fear of running out of the supply of these components makes the countries that extract or produce them think. So yes, according to this group of nerds, the nations that sell all their mineral production to the United States are beginning to realize that the powerful Northern Empire depends on them to function. As simple as that. So by this time, are they already opening trade dialogue channels with other powers? Because why sell cheap if they need what I have so much? They are already receiving significant offers from nations that were affected by Donald Trump's tariffs. They want to take commercial revenge, and that implies that from having a single customer, the producers went to having 12 in a few hours. All those nations angry with Donald Trump's trade policy will raise the price and take over the production that was previously destined for North America. This tariff thing, which seemed like a simple decision, will be the beginning of the end for the bright lights of the United States. By 2026, it will no longer have enough electrical energy to supply its industries and its citizens. Scheduled outages and limitations will become necessary. The government would fall weeks later. And that solves the problem? Of course not. The neighbors like Mexico and Canada will be somewhat offended by the mistreatment received and will not easily forget. While the world powers will be at the limit of energy production without showing much interest in helping. So that arrogance will have sentenced the future of what was once known as the most powerful country in the world. Third prophecy, welcome to the artificial states of America. Vasily is a 37-year-old man who was conceived a few months after a nuclear disaster that his parents were unfortunate witnesses. They had been unharmed, but only apparently, because the pregnancy was not at all pleasant and the baby was born without eyes or nose. But with certain special abilities that the Russians knew how to take full advantage of. They have had him locked up since he turned 6 under the name of the Chernobyl boy. Why? Because he has episodes of experience, he doesn't know when they happen, he can't control them or focus them on a topic, he just falls to the ground. He stops breathing for 2 to 3 minutes and finally comes to, taking a big gulp. And when he gets up, he starts to tell what he saw. And the government people arrive immediately in black cars with Russian flags because they maintain that every damn thing he sees while he's unconscious happens. In this case, he has prophesied the fall of the United States in the following way. By 2026, 35% of Americans will follow the orders of artificial intelligence. And he's not referring to the bots that control and incentivize thousands of employees today by organizing their jobs, like Uber apps or product delivery drivers. He's talking about conscious programs that design and implement labor policies in companies and government with the aim of reducing costs. Trump and Elon Musk are accelerating for 2027. They want to be at the forefront of the world and raise that figure to 85% in a few months, while the other powers go in the opposite direction and start to slow down. By the way, the implementation of conscious artificial intelligence. Why? For 3 reasons. First, because of the huge energy consumption that the new processors require. Second, to not increase unemployment. And third, because the same artificial intelligence warned them about the devastating consequences for humans if they did not postpone its implementation. But none of this matters to the President of the United States, who has a vision that says, if we are the first, we will be the greatest. Not realizing that he is running that race alone. When the United States' own artificial intelligence refuses to move forward and warns that the immediate application of maximum potential would end all human tasks within a few years, and that each energy resource should be allocated to the maintenance and production of more autonomous units. That is, thousands and thousands of robots. Trump replaces her with a better, more advanced model with less morality. Because, of course, nothing tells the United States what to do. They bet everything and mass production of autonomous units begins. These robots reflect the typical American taste. They are big, strong, energy-consuming, and noisy. Paselis claims that in his vision he could see how progress, especially what was once human, is it so atrocious that the very artificial intelligence of the United States had less morality than the previous one. Either way, he refuses to continue arguing that it is unviable for human beings and predicts the social explosion that will occur. However, the government, far from stopping, accelerates and replaces the artificial intelligence with a newer one that no longer questions anything and acts regardless of the consequences. Donald Trump and Elon Musk are making more and more robots, bigger and more autonomous. And well, when does the battle start? When 100,000 8-ton robotic beasts take control of the main government buildings. It's already too late. The weapons for defense depend on artificial intelligence. Of course, they ask for help from other countries, but very quickly, the main governments of the world understand that they should not provide any assistance to Trump. Why? Because it's much easier to negotiate with the new robot president of the United States. Not only does he demand less and offer more, but he does it with better manners. I am the documentalist. And this was 3 prophecies about the end of the United States.